that I've been really excited about. This is obviously a bit chunky. Didn't think I had anything interesting to say. Please welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Maria and today's video is going to be a reading vlog, and it's one that I've been really excited about because these are both books that I've been really highly anticipating. Two favourite authors of mine, but so far I've only read their YA books and they've both come out with some adult debuts, so really excited to jump into these. So the first book I'm going to be reading in this vlog is Book of Night by Holly Black. Now you'll know Holly Black probably from the Folk of the Air trilogy, so the Cruel Prince trilogy as sometimes it's called. I really love that trilogy, really love kind of the authentic kind of folklore depiction of the Fae, and just really enjoyed the writing in that one. So I'm really intrigued to see what she does with this, because this is a bit more of an urban fantasy, kind of set in our world, and all I really know about it is it has kind of shadow magic in here. I believe it's following a main character who is a thief and has grown up all her life being a thief, and I believe she's been trying to kind of better her life and move away from her past, but someone from that past ends up coming back into her life and kind of throws her into the mix of magical power struggles and basically this world of people trying to take over the shadow world. And I've seen some mixed reviews about this one, seen some people who really enjoyed it and then seen some other people who really didn't like this one, so I'm really intrigued to see where I fall with this. As I say, I really liked her writing in the Folk of the Air trilogy, so I'll be really interested to see what she does in this first kind of adult novel, and it's quite a short one, it's not really that long, but the second book in this series has been announced for, I think it's September or October or something like that, so I thought this was the perfect time to pick this one up. And then the next one is Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. So this again is her adult debut. I've read all of the Shadowhunter series, really loved them. And this is kind of the opposite to Holly Black. So Cassandra Clare had traditionally wrote kind of urban fantasy, whereas I think this one is more of a traditional fantasy. It's in a made up kind of fantasy world called Castlane, and this one, all I know is it has three characters. One's a prince, one's a orphan, and the other one, I think it's a healer or something like that. A physician, sorry, who has these rare magical abilities, and basically circumstances throw these three together, and that's all I really know. I just know it's a highly political world. Guessing there's going to be some sort of unrest that's going to be unraveling, and they will maybe have to band together to tackle that. But kind of going into this one a little bit blind, but I've heard nothing but good things about this one. I don't think a lot of people have picked it up, but anyone that I've watched who has read it or read this and the sequel have really loved it. So again, really intrigued to see what she does with a adult novel, and this is obviously a bit chunky, but really excited to dive in because I know I really love her writing. I usually really love her relationships and her characters, so I'm hoping I'm going to get the same feelings with this one as I did with the Shadowhunter series. So yeah, these are the two books that are on the agenda for this week. Depending on how quickly I can read them, I may include something else. But as I say, Swordcatcher is pretty chunky, so it's probably going to keep me busy, even though Book of Night is pretty short. So yeah, they're the two books I'm going to be reading, so I'll just be taking you along with me, giving you all my feelings, my thoughts, my reactions, letting you know if I recommend them. Definitely really excited to jump into both of these. Just jumping on to give you a quick update on my reading. So I have started reading Book of Night by Holly Black, and I'm about 30% into this one actually, so it has been quite a fast read. I have been listening along to the audio for this one as well, and so far for this one I'm liking it. I'm not loving it yet. I'm not kind of gripped or anything. I am enjoying kind of the build up, enjoying some of the backstory, but I would say that I am still a little bit confused about the world building in this in terms of the magic system. I think obviously I did say that this is following a girl who has kind of been a con artist her entire life. She has been trying to move away from that, but something comes up from her past and essentially she has to kind of go back into that world, and within this there is obviously shadow magic that is kind of prevalent within here, but to be honest, I'm not really kind of catching the whole gist of the shadow magic and exactly why it's important, or it seems to be a lot of rich people have it, but in terms of the benefit of having that shadow magic, it's not really clear to me yet. But I am only 30% in, so maybe that will be explained as the book goes on. But the way it's being told, it's all from Charlie, who is the main character in this. It's her perspective, and we're kind of having some present day scenarios playing out, but we are also getting some jumps back to the past to kind of explain maybe why things are the way they are at the moment, and I am enjoying that aspect. So as I say, at the minute it's kind of enjoyable, but it's definitely not gripping me. It's definitely not one that I kind of cannot wait to get back into reading this one. So we'll see how it goes. 30% in, hoping at this point, I think just with the way that the narrative has gone, it may be a little bit of a turning point and the narrative may start to move in the direction that it's going to for the story. But so far, not wowed, but definitely still intrigued, definitely still enjoying it and liking the writing style. It doesn't really read like Holly Black because obviously a lot of her other stories are fae and whimsical and a bit more of a dark fairy tale. This is definitely reading just a bit more urban. So I do like the writing style, but it's definitely not what I'm familiar with from Holly Black, but that is completely fine and it was expected when I was going into this. So far, okay vibes, definitely getting okay vibes, not wowed, but still intrigued enough to continue on with this one. And then for Swordcatcher, so I have started this, but I'm only about 12% in, so I've literally just got the backstory to understand who the people are that are going to be in the story. So I think with this one, essentially, as I said, we're following the prince and his essentially bodyguard and body double, who will be there to kind of stand in for him when events are going to be too dangerous or if there's going to be a threat to his life or anything like that. So basically Kel, who is the sword catcher, is taken from an orphanage when he's really young to become this bodyguard with the prince. Now the prince seems to be like a really nice character. They kind of became fast friends and we kind of jump from that very start bit where the two boys are 10 and they kind of become these comrades because of this situation. We jump then to when the characters are around 23 and that's kind of where I've got to within the book. So obviously not too much has happened, it's only 12% in and this is a pretty thick book. We have also met the FMC within here. He is a physician. I'm not sure if I called her a healer or a physician at the start of this video, but she's a physician and basically the magic that she uses as part of her job has been outlawed for quite some time, really frowned down upon. Within her work, women aren't really respected. She's the first physician within kind of her field and she is paving the way for other women, but still definitely trying to work to get that respect from kind of the wider community. So really interested to see how her character progresses, how we see the political differences that there are between her kingdom and the kingdom of the Crown Prince. There has been quite a lot of information given to us about some of the neighbouring countries and some of the political stances that they have. Still kind of digesting all of that at the moment to try and understand the landscape, but really liking this so far, really liking the characters. I feel like Cassandra Clare is going to make me fall in love with these characters. I'm probably going to put them through hell, as she always does in her books. So only 12% in, very early to judge enjoyment of this, but so far I'm already pretty gripped and I want to see what happens, so that's a really good sign for this one. So yeah, I'm going to be reading a bit more tonight, just going to go down and have an hour or two just reading and see how far I can get through. I do think I'll finish Book of Night pretty quickly. As I say, it's a pretty slim book. I think it's just over like 300 pages or something like that, and I am using the audiobook for this one as well just to read along with it, so I don't think this one will take me too long to finish. I may potentially finish this by tomorrow, depending on how much reading time I get tonight and tomorrow morning. So we'll see how I get on with that one. Swordcatcher will take me a lot longer. I think it's around 600 pages, so literally double the length of that one. So I'll still have plenty to talk about with this one, but I may end up picking up another book. Depending on how invested I get in this one, I may just keep it as one book reading at a time. But yeah, I'll read more tonight. I'll, as I say, hopefully get a good bit more through Book of Night, and I'll give you an update once I've read a bit more. Hi lovelies, so I have now finished Book of Night by Holly Black and I'm a little conflicted with this one, a little bit conflicted because this is one that I definitely enjoyed it while I was reading it, but it didn't wow me or anything. I didn't feel like I was getting any emotions being evoked or having a real connection with the characters or with the narrative or anything like that. And so I'm a little bit conflicted with it because on the face of it and objectively it was written well. I liked the writing style, there was nothing kind of wrong with it, but I just didn't feel a connection with the story at all, and
up until maybe the last 50 pages, I just wasn't really that interested in it. I wasn't kind of dying to get back into the book or anything like that. So overall, it kind of fell maybe a little bit flat for me, and that's really disappointing because I really do love Holly Black's other work. So I had been really anticipating this one, and on the face of it, it sounds like it's going to be, you know, completely my vibe. So there's shadow magic, it's very dark and eerie setting, and I do think that it did have kind of a similar feel to, if you've read Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, just taking away the dark academic side of that. This had that kind of same setting and environment and feeling for me, but unfortunately I just didn't have enough connection to the characters to keep me intrigued. I think I'm happy with plots to be pretty slow and for kind of the world building to be slow and the pacing to be slow if I'm in love with the characters or if there's a lot of character development, but for me, the character development in here was pretty flat. I don't think we were getting telling rather than showing, but it kind of was a little bit. I don't feel like we really got immersed within the characters' kind of minds or motivations until quite a bit later on in the book. So I think like the last 50 pages is when I really started to enjoy it and really felt myself getting a bit more immersed in the narrative and what was going to happen. There were a few twists and turns in there that I didn't see coming, but some that were also a little bit predictable as well. So that's why I'm a bit conflicted about my enjoyment level of this one. And I think just in terms of the characters and their relationships, a lot of the relationships were obviously before this, and we do have a dual timeline within this one, so jumping into the past and then coming to the future, but the past scenes were more so to support the narrative rather than support the kind of character development, if that makes sense. So they were devices to kind of tell us why things were happening rather than who these people are. And again, that just meant that I wasn't fully connected with the characters, especially when it comes to the relationship with the FMC and the MMC in here. Although the MMC kind of felt a bit more like a side character, but we're supposed to kind of believe by the end of this that they had this kind of intense relationship and love for each other, when throughout kind of the first few scenes when they are together, they're almost like nonchalant towards each other. And I don't know if that's just because I wasn't feeling the character development, so it was feeling nonchalant because they were falling flat for me, or is that, you know, exactly how they were written? So yeah, it just meant that the motivations for me and kind of the characters' actions just sometimes didn't make sense, and it meant that I couldn't really root for the characters to be either together or for certain things to happen for them, because a lot of the decisions that the FMC was making were nonsensical, and I think if we'd known her character a bit more, known why she was a bit more reckless and maybe why she was making these decisions, we would be able to root for her, because even though we know she's doing something she shouldn't be doing, we know why she's doing it. But with this, I just didn't feel that, and yeah, just meant it took me out of the story a little bit and I just couldn't fully connect. So I ended up rating this one around a 3.25 because, as I say, I did enjoy the writing. I think objectively it was a pretty well written story, you know, there wasn't bad writing or anything in here, but I just think it maybe wasn't for me. But I think, as I say, the last 50 pages were pretty intriguing and did kind of bring me into the story a bit more. I wish we'd had more of that within the narrative and the build-up hadn't been so long, or if it was going to be a long build-up, that we got a bit more of that kind of payoff at the end, because, as I say, this is a pretty short book. We don't have long in there, so I feel like the pacing needed to be a bit quicker and a bit more action-packed for such a short book, because most of the book was pretty much just that build up, and even at that I don't really feel like we got what I would have wanted from the build up. So yeah, 3.25 for this one. Not a terrible book, but certainly not one that I think I'm gonna be raving about or anything. I think I still will read the sequel because I think this is just a duology. And as I say, the last 50 pages did grip me a bit more, so intrigued to see where that story goes, but it's probably not as high on my anticipated list as it was before. So yeah, that does mean that I will be moving on to just reading Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare, so I'm still not too far into this one. I'm only around 18% in, so haven't read much more since the last time we chatted, because I did just want to concentrate on Book of Night and try and get it finished. But today is Saturday and I have a bit of a free day. My husband is at a course today, so I kind of have the day to myself. So I probably will just be reading for most of it, trying to get a good chunk of this read. This is a much chunkier book, so it will take me a little bit longer, but probably just be chilling, relaxing, reading for a little while. May go for a walk later with Frank and listen to this while I am walking as well. But for the most part I'm reading this physically. I do have the audiobook, but I don't really like the narrators, so I don't want to take away from the experience by listening to narrators that I'm not really vibing with. So for the most part I will be reading this physically, just to get the best experience of it, because so far I am really enjoying it. So yeah, just going to be sitting here reading today. Probably give you a few updates as I'm going through this in terms of my enjoyment, but as soon as I've read a bit more I'll jump on and let you know.
so I'm around 50% into Swordcatcher now, so that's page 332 and that's chapter 14. So really enjoying this so far. I would say that even at this 50% mark, we're still very much getting the setup of this world. It is very intricate, it's very rich, there's a lot of kind of folklore here, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of backstory. We're getting a lot of narrative around the different kind of areas around Castellane as well, and kind of how they interact with them, trading and things like that. And we're getting a lot of information about the nobility families, and they have what are called charters. So essentially one family will be managing all of the ink supply, one family will be managing the dye supply, one family will be managing the paper supply. So all these different things, like if you're within the nobility, you will have some sort of ownership over those things, and obviously that's where their wealth comes from, and that's why they're part of this noble circle. So we are getting a whole host of characters within here. We obviously still just have the three main characters, which are Connor, the prince, Kel, who is his sword catcher and kind of the orphan who was brought up to protect him, and then we have Lynn, who is the physician within this world. And it's only really now that their stories have started to converge. A lot of what we're getting is kind of an insight into some of the criminal underworld within this time. We're starting to see that some of the characters may have certain secrets and certain storylines that have been going on in the background that we're just starting to find out. We're basically getting most of the story through Kel and Lynn's perspective. We haven't yet had a perspective from Connor, which I think is intentional. I think there's obviously going to be some secrets there as well. I'm just really intrigued to see where this one goes. I'm not sure I'm fully grasping the entire world here. I think it would have been nice to maybe have a map of the world outside Castellane. You do get a map for Castellane itself in here. So this is the Fairyloot edition. I don't know if I showed this off, but you get a map for kind of the city and the kingdom where they're living, which is great. I always love that. But I think just because there's so much mention of some of the other territories and kind of some of the histories there, it would have been nice to have that map to kind of understand where they sit. But not sure how important a lot of the information is. You know, with these more kind of epic fantasies, sometimes the information is really important and sometimes it is just giving you a picture for a certain scene or a certain character or something like that. So we'll see. It may not be as important as the story goes on, but I really like in here we are getting some excerpts of basically like a mythology within this land. So there's a certain goddess that certain parts of the kingdom worship, and then there's a old leader who people worshipped, and there's kind of a story between them as well, and we're having that unfold at the end of each chapter. We're getting kind of an excerpt from that story. So again, it's just adding to the richness of the world and adding to kind of that build up of, I'm guessing it's going to connect to the main narrative as well, and I can kind of see hints of where I think it's going to come into play and where it's going to be important, but so far the links aren't quite there yet. But really enjoying the characters in this, really enjoying how I think the relationships may develop. There is very minimal discussions of romance, and you know, this isn't quite the same as if you've read Shadowhunters. A lot of the narrative within there was the relationships between the people. There's usually a lot of yearning, a lot of angst there. It's not quite the same in this. This is much more of a fantasy-led story. So I think the writing style is definitely a little bit different in this one. So I wouldn't say if you loved Shadowhunters, you'll definitely love this one, but myself personally, I did really love Shadowhunters and I am really loving this. I really like the writing style, really love the character development so far. I feel like we're really getting to know these characters, and I do feel like this book may be a bit of a setup book. We may just be getting the setup for probably 70 to 80% of this book, and then I'm guessing the narrative will kick off. But I like that. I do personally like that. I personally like to be able to kind of know the characters inside out, really understand their motivations, and I feel like that's exactly what we're getting here. And yeah, just really love the writing style, really loving the story so far. I am trying to read it physically as much as possible because I didn't really like the narrator for the audiobook, as I was saying, and I have listened to some of it via the Alexa kind of read assist, but again, it's not the same as kind of reading it physically. I'm enjoying it a lot more when I'm just reading it with my eyeballs rather than trying to listen to it. So it's taken me a little bit longer to get through than I had anticipated, and I do kind of need an audiobook while I'm reading this as well. So I decided to pick up another book just to have something that I can listen to while I'm maybe doing housework or while I'm getting ready and things like that, because I don't want to listen to this while I'm doing that because I feel like I'm just not concentrating on it because it's not a proper audiobook or anything like that. So decided to pick up To Bleed a Crystal Bloom by Sarah A. Parker, and this is one that I've had on my radar for such a long time, literally years at this point, but I did pick up her book When the Moon Hatched when it came out last year. Absolutely loved it, really loved the writing style, really loved the story, cannot wait for the sequel to that one. So decided to go back to her backlist and pick this one up, see if it's one that I would enjoy. Now I've seen a lot more mixed reviews on this one, but with When the Moon Hatched it also had very mixed reviews because it's a very lyrical story. It was very confusing for the most part. It wasn't really kind of a clear narrative as you were going through it, and I think so far in this one I'm definitely feeling the same thing. So I've actually got pretty far into this one. I'm around 24% into it just from listening to it last night and reading it in bed and then listening again this morning. So I think this is going to be a pretty fast read. And so far I will say I'm a little confused with what's going on, and I think it is intentional. I think it's kind of a narrative driver that this author uses, because I'm understanding what's happening in the scene, but the bigger picture and why things are happening definitely aren't on my radar, but I do think it's done on purpose. So basically this one starts off with this warrior basically coming up to what is called a safe house, which has essentially been set on fire. A lot of the people living there have been killed in a pretty brutal way, and essentially he doesn't see that there's any survivors apart from this young girl who is too, and circumstances mean that he ends up trying to take her and save her from this wreckage. And then basically that's just the first chapter. Then fast forwards 19 years in the future and we're following Orlaith, or this is the pet peeve that I have because it's actually spelt the same way that the Irish name Orla is spelt, but they're calling her Orlaith in the audiobook, so I'll take it that that was the intention of the author, but I can't help but read Orla. So depending on what you want to call her, the main character Orlaith is around 21 or coming up to 21 at this point. She's been living in this castle for 19 years. She has this kind of invisible safety line that she's drawn around the castle that she won't cross. She doesn't want to go out to kind of the neighbouring villages or anything. She is training and trying to learn self-defence, but she's doing this in secret from the warrior who had saved her, so she doesn't want him knowing that this is what she's doing. And there's a whole host of things going on at the moment, kind of showing how she's quite nervous, how she's quite anxious. As I say, she has this safety line drawn. There's loads of people within this castle who are basically the wards of the castle, but we don't really understand what this castle is, what its function is, why she's there. And then another element of it is that she has to kind of donate a drop of her blood daily to this warrior who saved her, and the reason for it is again unexplained at this moment. So hopefully as we read through we may get a bit more clarity. And as I say, when I read When the Moon Hatched, a lot of it was quite confusing until the end where a lot of things were revealed, so guessing that's going to be the same with this one, but it's definitely a bit of a lighter read, a bit of an easier read for me compared to Swordcatcher, at least at this point. I do think I'm going to get a lot of information thrown at me soon within this one, but I just wanted something else that I could listen to when I'm not able to kind of physically read. But my main physical read will be Swordcatcher, trying to get that finished. But in the meantime I thought I might as well pick something up, and why not start another series, even though I'm in the middle of like 40 something series. What's one more to the pile? So I wanted to read this one as well because I have been eyeing up the indie hardback editions, and I thought rather than just buying them, I'll actually read the first book to see if it's something that I like, because I have a feeling this is going to be traditionally published soon and I would like to get the indie covers before that happens. But trying to be good, trying to be practical, and actually read the first book before I invest in them, because they're not that cheap, but I don't mind investing in them if I do really love the book. So we'll see how I get on with this one. As I say, I'm about 24% into this already, so hopefully this should be a pretty quick read and I should get through this quite quickly. But yeah, once I've read a bit more into these, probably this one, if I get to around 50% or something like that, I'll come on and give you an update. And then for Swordcatcher, maybe the 70 to 80% mark, I'll give you an update, and then just when I've finished, depending on if it is just kind of still building on the world, I'll maybe not give an update on this one until I finished it. But if we're getting any kind of more information, a bit more clarity, I have a bit more feelings about things, I'll come on and give you an update on this one as well. But today is Monday, so I am working today, but I should have a good bit of time to read after work today, and then I'll obviously be listening to a bit more of To Bleed a Crystal Bloom later today as well. So yeah, basically just be reading a bit more today, and as soon as I have some more updates I'll jump on and let you know. So just jumping on, because I have now finished Swordcatcher and To Bleed a Crystal Bloom, and I was going to jump on before kind of I finished them both, maybe at about the 70 or 80% mark, but quite honestly I just didn't think I had anything interesting to say, so decided to just hop on once I'd finished them. So I'll start with To Bleed a Crystal Bloom because I think it's probably going to be a bit easier to talk about. But this one continued to be confusing right up until the end, but I think I mentioned that having read When the Moon Hatched, I was kind of expecting that with this one. I think that is kind of a plot mechanism that Sarah Parker uses. It's quite a common trope, to be fair, and I think that might have took away from my enjoyment of this one because I was continually looking for the mystery, I was continually looking for the secret or the twist that was going to happen at the end, whereas I think if I had gone into this not knowing that that was kind of the story and not really understanding where it was going to go, I might have enjoyed that aspect a little bit more, because it would have shocked me a lot more when the twist was revealed at the end. But I think the main thing for me with this one is that I don't feel like I can root really for the MMC or the love interest in this one, because essentially he is supposed to be someone who took the main female character in when she was 2 years old and has kind of almost raised her from that point. So that for me just gave me the ick straight
straight away. It just kind of didn't feel like something I could root for. I mean, there's a whole host of other things which would potentially put some people off this couple. They're very toxic, you know, there's definitely a bit of a power dynamic that isn't quite equal within this, but it is supposed to be a dark romantasy. It is supposed to have those dark elements. So if it had just have been all of that, I think I could have rooted for this couple. It was quite intense, it was quite angsty, but I could kind of understand that trope. But just that element of him basically bringing her up since she was 2, almost like a father figure, it's given me the ick a little bit, so I'm not sure if I can root for them. I'm not sure if that's where the series is going to go with the love interest, because I'm wondering, is this kind of a situation like with Guild in the Play the Prisoner series, where you kind of think you know what's going on in the first book, but as you go on within the series, the trajectory really just takes it in a different direction. So unsure whether I will continue within this series to see if that is what happens. I'm very, very conflicted on that right now. I think I really like the world building in this. I really liked the writing style. It was very poetic, but not too in your face with this one. Like When the Moon Hatched was extremely poetic. This one has kind of poetic verses interspersed in there, but a lot of the dialogue and things like that are quite modern and a bit more what we would be used to with romantasy, so it definitely isn't as flowery as When the Moon Hatched. So if you did read that one and you didn't like it, you might still like this one, because I do think it's a lot more approachable in terms of the writing style. But yeah, overall I ended up giving this one 3-star, because I do think because of my lack of connection with the main characters in terms of rooting for them as a couple, it definitely just took some of the enjoyment away of the story for me. But not giving up on this series yet. I do think I may try the second book just before I decide if I'm going to read on or DNF, but it's definitely not as high on my priority list as it might have been before. But definitely glad I picked this one up. I kind of assuaged my curiosity with this one, because When the Moon Hatched was one of my favourite books last year, so I wanted to pick up this one and kind of read her backlist, but not disappointed as such in this. It's just not exactly what I was expecting with it, so undecided as to whether I will continue with this one. But yeah, overall I ended up rating this one 3 stars. In contrast to that, with finishing Swordcatcher, I definitely feel like I got everything I was expecting in this and more, and while it wasn't quite a 5-star for me, it was definitely very high up there, and I ended up rating it 4.25 stars. So as a huge Shadowhunters lover, I was highly anticipating to read this one to see what Cassandra Clare had done with an adult novel, and as I say, really, really happy to say it didn't disappoint. I think in this one we definitely see Cassandra Clare's strength in writing kind of a whole host of characters and helping us connect with them and really embroiling ourselves in their lives, as she does with the Shadowhunter world. I definitely think her strength is in that, and we definitely see that evident here. And in terms of characters, I think the two main MMCs, so obviously the Prince and the Swordcatcher, we definitely see kind of their brotherhood within here, their devotion to each other, and at times the sacrifices they would make for each other was hard to read within this, but it definitely gave me the same vibes as if you've read The Infernal Devices, Will and Jem within that series. Just kind of that friendship and that bond that they have was really reminiscent of this for me. And as The Infernal Devices is one of my favourite series, I definitely ate that up. The FMC in here as well is a really strong character. I really loved her characterisation and her growth throughout the story. She does kind of have some I'm not like other girl traits, but it's definitely for a good cause, and she stands up to a system that is trying to kind of hold her down and push her back and not let her grow in the way that she should. They're trying to keep her contained, but I was rooting for her the entire time as well, and I just really wanted to see her break out of her shell and break out of those chains from that system. I think the world building in this was really vast, it was really rich. I really loved the kind of interwoven folklore within here between the goddess and the warrior, which is kind of a story that's interwoven within the narrative, but it really just added to that dark whimsy of the story. And throughout, in terms of the world building, I couldn't help but compare it to Six of Crows. I definitely think it had that gritty kind of dark criminal underbelly within there, and the more we kind of got embroiled within that criminal side of things, it definitely was reminiscent of the feeling I got when I was reading Six of Crows. And what's interesting about this one is we're kind of delving into that criminal side of things. However, we also got the side of kind of the elites that someone like Kaz Bracker would have been fighting against. So it was interesting the way kind of the Swordcatcher, who is Kel within this, was used almost as a conduit between the two and helped us see through the lens of kind of both worlds. In terms of the romance within this one, because I do see this cited as a romantasy quite often, obviously because of Cassandra Clare's previous work, we get kind of crumbs of crumbs in here. They are really satisfying when we do get those scenes, but this definitely isn't romance forward. But I do think between one of the couples there's definitely going to be a bit of a boy obsessed storyline, and I can't wait to read on in that one. But I think overall with this one, if you like kind of political intrigue, political fantasy, court dealings with messy and kind of morally grey characters, I think you'll really, really enjoy this one. And with the way that this one ended, I really can't wait to move on to the second book, because I need to know more about the Ragpicker King. He was kind of prevalent within this story, but I'm pretty sure there's a bigger story to tell with that character. And obviously the second book is called The the Ragpicker King, so I'm guessing we're going to get that story. So yeah, I think anyone who's read the Shadowhunter series, if you really enjoy Cassandra Clare's work, I do think you'll enjoy this. I mean, I love Shadowhunters and I really love this as well. I don't really think the two are comparable because I do think they're quite different in terms of the storytelling, but in terms of Cassandra Clare's writing, I think the quality in this is superb. So as I say, I ended up rating this one 4.25 stars, so did really enjoy it. It was probably a bit long at times, but I do think we got quite a lot of setup within this book, and I've heard that the second book is even better, so really excited to pick that one up soon. So yeah, that's everything. That's all the books I had to read this week. So I think I had two that were kind of middle of the road, but definitely really excited about the Swordcatcher series and kind of moving on with that one. But let me know if you've read any of these, let me know your thoughts and feelings, and especially if you've read the To Bleed a Crystal Bloom series. I really want to know how that continues and if it does get maybe not better as such, because I don't think it was bad, but I'd be intrigued to know if you think I'll like the direction that it goes in. And let me know what you've been reading recently in the comments below, and if there's any books you think I would enjoy based on my enjoyment of these ones. If you like this video, do remember to give it a like, and if you want to see more from me, remember to subscribe. I post 2 videos per week and it's videos like this, so reading vlogs, book hauls, TBR jars, all good bookish things like that. Other than that, thanks so much for watching this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one soon. Bye!